First, MAP 21, which was established in 2012, required that all state DOTs and MPOs establish a performance-based, outcome-based program. These include performance measures for safety, pavement condition, bridge, freight, the highway system, CMAQ, and transit. Where we are in the process. To sum it up, and what we've been hearing throughout short course earlier, is that we're still in the process. None of the rules have been finalized yet. We're still kind of waiting to hear the rules that we're supposed to follow. And we do have FHWA here on the panel to kind of go over some of those things. Performance-based approach. Performance-based approach is a good thing for transportation. It can improve our decision-making abilities. It can improve our return on investment. It can improve system performance, increase accountability and transparency, and link funding to performance. So here on the panel today we have Michelle Conkle with TPP in TxDOT. She is the statewide planning branch manager. Michelle has over 29 years combined experience in environmental planning and coordination, transportation planning and programming, and project management. She holds a bachelor degree in history from UT, a bachelor degree in political science from St. Edward's University, a master's degree in geography from Texas State University. We also have Dan Leary here from Dan Kesler from NCT COG. Dan is the Assistant Director of Transportation. He joined the staff at NCT COG in the MPO for the Dallas-Fort Worth in 1981. In October 1990, he was promoted to the Assistant Director. Prior to becoming the Assistant Director of Transportation, Dan served as a project manager overseeing the development of the region's metropolitan transportation plans, as well as numerous freeway, transit, corridor initiatives, and thoroughfare plans. He has also served as the project manager for the development of the region's hazardous materials routing system. Dan currently works with a team of senior project managers to oversee activities in the area of transportation planning, air quality, planning and operations, travel modeling development, congestion management, safety and security, intermodal planning, transit operation, and fiscal management. His education includes a bachelor's degree in community development from Purdue University, a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Illinois. Dan is a 1993 graduate of Leadership Fort Worth and a Fort Worth resident. Also on our panel is Mike Leary from FHWA. Mike Leary is the Director of Planning and Programming Development for FHWA. He is the director of the Texas Division Office. He has held that position since 2002. During his career, Mike has held positions in Planning and Environment Team Lead, Metropolitan Planning and Research Engineer, Statewide Planning Engineer, and Area Engineer. Prior to joining FHWA, Mike worked his way through the University of El Paso with the Texas Highway Department. Also on our panel today, we have John Cordary. He is the TPD from Fort Worth. He is a 1993 graduate of Texas A&M, and shortly after began working with TxDOT. He began his career in the Weatherford area office. He has also been an area engineer in 2007, and this past February, he became the TP&D of the Fort Worth district. Also on our panel, we have Chad Bohne with the Bryan District TxDOT. Chad is the TPD of the Bryan District. He has over 25 years in the transportation field. 20 of those years have been in the Bryan District, and through those 20 years he has been involved with the MPO, the Bryan College Station MPO, and he has a degree from Texas A&M. And finally, we have John DeWitt from San Angelo District TxDOT. He is the TPD for San Angelo. He has over 32 years with the San Angelo District, and 18 years of that have been with as a TPD, and he is a graduate of UT. I'm first going to begin the panel discussion with a question and kind of go through some of these questions first and then open it up to anyone that would like to ask our panelists any questions. There are 2 mics down these aisles, and if you do have a question, please come forward and ask your question so that everyone in the audience may hear. First, I'm going to start with Mike Leary from FHWA. Mike, could you please give us an update of the status of the NRPM and when you think the planning community might be receiving guidance on the implementation of MAP 21 at the state and local level?
If I really knew, I'd buy a lottery ticket tonight and not come back. I bought a lottery ticket last night and wouldn't have shown up today. The website shows that the performance planning rule changes to 23 CFR 450. Right now it's on schedule to be produced or come out in the Federal Register in March or April of next year. I made several calls to see if I could get some sort of information about, amount of comments or what the reasons why it's taken so while. There were, of course, a number of rules that were promulgated. There's been a problem. Nobody's returning my phone call. I'm a little bit of a conundrum here because Federal Highway in general is not allowed to make too much comment in terms of when rules are being made. So anything that I'm saying is my personal opinion and does not reflect Federal Highway. So, we expect the rule, like say, in March or April of next year. A year after that, the state has to set their performance targets, and 6 months after that, the MPOs have to adopt those. So, I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but that's what I've got.
That's the answer. Thank you. The next question is going to be for Michelle Conkle. Michelle, could you please give us an update on the status of the implementation of MAP 21 and the TPP 2040, which is our Texas Transportation Plan 2040, which is the long-range plan for TxDOT, and the development of the targets at the state level?
Why, yes, I certainly can. For those of you that may not be aware, TxDOT started with the development of their first performance-based long-range transportation plan in August of 2013. At that time, we went out to the public and started collecting information about what we wanted to know what their needs were, what we should be measuring, what was important to our stakeholders and the driving public, traveling public actually. We brought those back and we formulated six goals that basically brought the MAP 21 transportation goals together with TxDOT's strategic plan goals. We did a thorough analysis of the system and its current performance, and we also projected needs. Then we went back out to the public and we talked a little bit about what we thought our needs were going to be and the resources we thought that we were going to need to meet transportation needs, and then we allowed them to participate in an interactive, interactive public involvement tool that allowed them to play TxDOT, if you will, for a day and make funding decisions so that we could educate the public on the trade-offs that we have to make in order to achieve performance. And that was really a great success. I think that the public was really, interested in being able to get a feel for what we have to do and the money that it's going to take. And that tool was really, instrumental in letting them understand that, if we're going to address congestion, then possibly we're going to have to reduce maintenance. If we're going to focus on maintenance, then, we might not have as much money for system expansion. So we tried to do a really good job of informing the public and our stakeholders what it's going to take for TxDOT and TxDOT stakeholders to move to a more performance-based planning process and project selection process. And so with that, we did develop our final goals for the plan. As we were out in the public, they basically said, well, you're missing a goal. You're missing, how are we going to pay for this? And we wholeheartedly agreed. We said, if that is something that's important to you, provide us comment. They did, so we added an additional goal to try to be I guess, come up with policies for the department to sustain funding to meet all of these goals. And so we added that goal, pulled our information together, created the final plan. We did a second public hearing, or a public hearing, after our second round of public and stakeholder involvement, and adopted the plan in February 2015. Since that time, we have been working with our consultant team and multiple MPOs and districts within TxDOT to implement the goals that we adopted and to start working towards putting targets using data and getting hard numbers for those performance measures that are actually requirements in MAP 21, with the addition of a few requirements from House Bill 20 from the last legislative session. So really where we're at right now is we are working on developing and providing tools for our partners to be able to assess projects, assess those projects in terms of what they'll be buying with their investment and how that will improve their performance. And we'll continue to work with them as we move towards the March, April goal of having final rules at the federal level.
And just to put a plug in for the plan, if you go to TxDOT's website and search TPP 2040, you can read all the great things that happened during the plan. So next I'm going to go through and have each one of the panelists provide an answer for this question to try to get at some of the challenges that they might be facing with implementation and target setting. So, well, Chad, I know you said you were right there. Don't start with you, but you're right there. Chad. Although the NPRM process is not yet complete, we've all been preparing for the implementation of the performance measures and target setting. What challenges have you faced in respect to coordination with your stakeholders?
Well, a little bit about Bryan College Station, as most of you know, having visited here, some of you that have the luxury of living here like I do. We have a unique community that's growing rapidly, and with that comes challenges, because we may not have a seat at the big boy table with the metros when it comes to some of the issues they face, but between Texas A&M and Blinn, those drivers keep us on a constant uptick for new folks in town, new drivers, new development, commercial, retail, and then those drivers, I see Ed over here who could nod at this one, that those drivers then don't exactly act like your normal student, or your student will say that they don't have a large income, but they seem to have travel trends like they do, and have greater income in their how they move about our community and the trips that they make. And so that puts us in a position where we are dealing with a lot of growth, and that is something that in our discussions of the dealing with the performance-based view is, what are we going to try and accomplish, because we don't necessarily have all of the funding streams of a larger metro when it comes to CMAQ funds, things like that, but we have some of the same problems, and we've discussed whether or not our attempts are going to be to hold the status quo when it comes to our congestion or our delay. We've, of course, got a big focus on safety because we have so many younger drivers as a percentage, and they're typically unfamiliar a lot of times with the community and how to travel around it. And then they evolve every few years. They come and go, and we get a new set. So we mainly have focused our discussions on and where can we put funds to improve the overall system, being the goal of the performance-based planning and how that will be viewed. And it's been interesting. We have not yet come up with a strategy for how to best apply what will be available to us. And so those discussions are ongoing, and we'll see where that takes us. But we kind of feel like we have a unique community here, and it poses challenges that have to have some unique solutions.
Thank you. Michelle? Do you see any challenges with coordination with our stakeholders at the state level?
I don't really, I mean, there's going to be challenges anytime that you're making, changes to a process. You're trying to implement a new process in a state as large as Texas with different demographics. But if the coordination, stakeholder coordination and public involvement, as we were developing the TTP 2040 is any indication, I don't think there's going to be a large problem coordinating. We're all working as a team toward the same goal. Everyone is experiencing the same, the same issues with not having enough money to meet their needs. So we all want to be able to have the tools to choose the best projects to give us the most enhancement to the transportation system. Everybody's been very open and honest while we were out on the road, bringing in stakeholders. They've been very passionate about what their needs are, and they shared those with us. So I think, again, if it was any indication, as we were defining Texas Transportation Plan goals, as we move into targets, I believe they'll bring the same enthusiasm and the same need for solutions to the funding problems that they have in the past. So I don't see any coordination issues myself.
And John, how about from the larger district perspective?
Well, I think like Michelle said, we have a good relationship with our local entities, and it will be communicating kind of the change in philosophy. We went through a project scoring process and how we evaluate those projects, and now we're going to shift a little bit and look at performance measures and how those projects are actually going to either improve performance. And it's going to, that mindset change is going to be key to communicate with those stakeholders that we're going to use this data now to evaluate a bunch of alternatives to projects and see how that those alternatives affect performance, and to monitor that performance over time.
Okay, Dan, at the MPO level?
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Well, I would just say there's some things about performance-based planning that I think sort of look at this historically. I've been doing this for over 3 decades, and there's some interesting perspective that we continue to see, and I think that's one thing that sort of, I think, gives me comfort about it. You know, when we were, I'll give you some examples. In 1991, ICE-T passed. Metropolitan planning organizations, the large metro areas, were all of a sudden given this authority to do project selection. And so we had to come up with criteria. I was actually in charge of the first call. We were very naive. We had about $400 or $500 million, and I think we got $22 billion worth of projects. That's really not an exaggeration. There was more money submitted for $500 million than all the money that was available in the United States. And you know, we worked through a process with our elected officials, and the criteria that we ended up using was congestion, safety, is it improving the environment, air quality, is it of regional significance, and is it a project where there is a financial contribution from a partner. And so here, you know, we're nearly 25 years later, looking again at goals and criteria. We're still talking about, you know, the same measures: mobility, safety, maintenance, quality of life. So I think from the perspective today, what I like about where we're at with performance measures is we've been talking about this for a long time. If you all recall, we went through a system after ICE-T of we had a congestion management system, a safety management system, a pavement management system, a transit management system. Management systems came through the federal MPO state planning requirements. Some were successful, some faded away, but again, I think it was the same concept that our federal government has been giving us guidance about, that we need to incorporate other factors into the planning and project selection process. You know, in our world, I think it's been very successful. I think, the HOV system that was built in the greater Houston area, I mean, the combination of TxDOT and Houston Metro and the MPO and all those people getting together in Houston in that time period and recognizing that the performance measure of person throughput was very high. I mean, that was the purpose for the design of that system. The light rail system in Dallas that we've built, it's the largest light rail system in North America. I mean, the elected officials, the MPO, DART, a lot of support from TxDOT. That was all about criteria that were established to support a different need. The challenge I think that we're facing, and we're seeing it now in the legislature, is some of our values change, some of what we think is important changes. You know, the last 2 decades, in particular the last decade in Fort Worth, in Dallas-Fort Worth, our emphasis has been on the implementation of toll lanes and managed lanes. And the whole driving performance behind that was find innovative ways to finance roads and get them built quickly. But we're hearing back, you know, from the state legislature and others that, you know, maybe tolling isn't the way we need to go. And so I think that is one of the challenges that we do face as professionals, and we're dealing with performance measures. And I think one of the performance measures, I've said to some folks this morning, is that we never really think about is how much public acceptance is there for what we're actually doing. We're finding at times we think there is, and there's times there's not necessarily, and it's a very difficult thing to measure. But, you know, we've had a dramatic shift in public policy in the state. And so to me, that's part of this process. The other part about it that I think, from our perspective, if we've been using performance measures for a long time, we just haven't done a very good job telling people what they were, putting them in terms that they actually understand. You know, when you talk about travel per capita or 100 million VMT or whatever, citizens don't understand those measures. And I think, again, we're all challenged if we're really going to take on this idea of performance-based planning. We've really got to find better ways to communicate with the public about what these measures are, what they mean, how they affect them, what their true costs are. And then the same is true with our legislators. I think we have a tremendous, you know, task in front of us. And I think the House Bill 20 initiative that started, I know Michael Morse on our staff, a lot of TxDOT folks are working very diligently late in the night to develop a process to work with the legislature to have performance-based planning in the state of Texas. Again, I think we have it. I think that's why we have one of the world's best transportation systems there is, because I think there was a lot of thought that went into it. We just have to do a better job, I think, explaining to people how we get to the decisions that we make.
And John, how about from the smaller district?
Well, I'll pick up where Dan left off, and my first thought on it was what you elaborated very eloquently a minute ago, much better than I'm going to do, about public outreach and education. It seems like each initiative, even though it may be sustained and carried on over a period of time, sometimes a number of years, each time we go out and present a portion or a step along the way in that development, people lose the thread unless they're following things very closely. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, is to get people to understand why we're doing what we're doing, what the benefits are, and then drill down, especially from a rural perspective, and capitalize upon some of the leverage we may not have had in the past that we can use to promote our projects and maybe move them forward a little bit toward the goal line. And what I think about is the challenge of developing mobility projects in rural areas, especially with our funding levels as they've been for the past, pick a number, past few years, as they've decreased and inflation has eroded our buying power even more. That's changing significantly because of measures the legislature has taken, tools they've given us, and hopefully with the passage of Prop 7 in November, if in fact it does, things will improve almost exponentially, at least it looks that way. So, are we going to be able to capitalize upon that and maybe use manifestation of these performance measures and the project selection process that stems from that to help promote expansion of corridors in rural areas based on something other than the traditional congestion index type take on things, traffic, almost surely traffic-driven analysis that we've applied historically. So to take a page from the Ports of Plains playbook, for instance, is it of value to the state to invest in that corridor and to expand it, to turn it into a viable alternate north-south corridor in order to take traffic off I-35? So it's a challenge, but if we can capitalize on it, you know, the glass is always half full. I think that's going to be where the real win is going to be, is in finding those opportunities within this new process and making some of these projects that have been sought after for a long time maybe inch closer to reality. That's what I'm hoping to get out of it.
Mike, would you like to add something on the federal level?
I think it's been eloquently addressed by the previous panelists. As far as coordination, I think from our point of view, we've seen a lot of TxDOT and others have stood up on this issue. The transportation plan, the work that COG has done for a number of years, the meetings that we had about a year ago where we started talking about this, the input between the MPOs and TxDOT, what they put forth for comments. I think there's a good set of communication that goes on. I think from what I see as far as the coordination, the challenges is the ones that are doing it already, the COGs, COG or HGAC, it's understood by what goes on. I see the challenges will be is when the targets come out nationally and then in turn from the state to the MPOs is the education and the medium size and the smaller ones as you go forward and going through the analytics, the scenario planning and figuring out how are you going to meet your targets that you set. And I see down the road is that continuing education, both of the public of what you're getting out of that, but 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, as your policy makers change, as you see these, you know, somebody may, well, that's a great target, but I do want to build this interchange, or I do want to build, and how does that fit back within, as we eloquently point out, no money or not as much money as you like. So how does that fit within what you set your goals are, and why are you trying to get there, and where does that other money come from? I see that that's going to be one of the challenges and the communication issues that will continually come up. There's never enough money, and there's always a change in what the priorities are from the local elected officials, in my opinion.
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say on any issues or coordination with stakeholders?
I was just going to add to what my esteemed panelists said. I think that the messages that we got were very positive out in the public, and they were very clear. Educate us so we can be part of the process. Tell us what the needs are and help us understand. They don't have a great understanding of travel time delay, but they understand delay. They know they can't get from A to B. And I agree with Dan, it's a throughput issue. And so we do really need to do a better job of making the process relatable to the public. And I think we really did, at least we had, again, attempted to do that with the TTP 2040 and having the interactive tool with the chip game that allowed them to look at what the trade-offs are. They also wanted to understand in tangible terms, not that we don't have enough money to meet our needs, that's easy enough to say, but we took what I consider a bold step for the department and put the big B behind it. It's billions. It's billions. We didn't load the chip game with monopoly money or Jeffrey dollars, or, you know, we actually said we need billions of dollars to do this. and then we told them what the needs were in the state, and we let them allocate that money. The really important part of that message is that they were able to see in real time what they were giving up for making the investments that they wanted to make at a personal level. And I think that's key, because I don't think sometimes that the users of the system understand that you can want expansion to address a congestion issue if you're willing to drive on pavement that is, not very kind to your car. So you're going to pay for that one way or another. It's going to be car maintenance because the system isn't as good at a shape maintenance-wise. There's going to be trade-offs, and so we tried to help them understand. And I can honestly say, as I sit here, we had no one person at any stakeholder meeting or the public come away from that experience with being negative about any revenue stream that TxDOT or the MPOs would think about needing to pursue. As a matter of fact, after they saw the trade-offs, we had a lot of people walking up, and Casey was there, what do you need us to do? And then shortly after that, we went into the November election, and the public was kind enough to put their trust in us and give us some additional money. So I absolutely agree with the panelists. Like most of us, we know that we're going to have to pay for the services we have, but we would like to know where the money's going. We would like to know what the problem is, and we would like to be dealt with and educated in terms of what our part is there. And I think it's just crucial that we continue to build on that and do that, and I think that we will get the support from the public. That, again, my personal opinion, not speaking for our legislators or TxDOT. Thank you.
Well, a couple observations about performance-based planning that I think make it a challenge. So much, well, first of all, in a region, and we have many of them across the state that are growing so fast. I mean, Dallas-Fort Worth, we added 1.2 million people in the last decade. That's the fastest we've ever grown. We're expected to be 10.7 million by 2040. The state comptroller says we could be as many as 14 million by 2060. So imagine Dallas-Fort Worth 40 years from now, twice as big as it is. With the limited resources, it's going to be very difficult to come up with regional performance measures that are going to capture the incremental benefit of individual projects when the demand is growing so much faster than we can possibly keep up. But I think we're going to have to find creative ways to do that. The other thing that's a challenge, and Brian Barth is here with the Fort Worth District, he can certainly speak to this better than me. So much of the opportunities that come before us to build projects are based on the availability of funds, the timing of those dollars, when a project came out of an environmental process. We're incredibly thankful to the legislature for Prop 1 and Prop 7, but they've been very explicit about the idea that none of those dollars can be spent on transit or toll-related facilities. So it's very difficult to communicate to the public all of the things that go into the process that ultimately gets projects built. The flip side of that in Dallas-Fort Worth, it's pretty hard to build a bad project. I mean, we have so much traffic and congestion everywhere. It's probably impossible to really build a bad project. So, that's the flip side of it. But I do think that's another challenge we have. How do you show a positive outcome when you're really swimming upstream, revenue is tight, and, we're growing so fast?
Okay. I'm going to do one more question for the panel, and then I'm going to see if any one of you have a question. So keep your questions in your mind for one more question, and then come down to the mic if you have one. My last question is for the panelist is, do you see any challenges with respect to having the resources that you need to implement performance-based planning and program requirements, staff-wise, data-wise, tools-wise, that you are not seeing that you are going to be able to do your performance measures or make your targets due to the lack of resources that you may have? This time I'm going to start at the other end. Mike, we'll start with you.
Yes. I see that this is for those that aren't involved in it, like COG. It's an uphill battle to get into this, and for an education effort, both first with the policy boards, technical committees, developing what your performance target's going to be. How are you going to get there? How do you collect that data? How you roll it back in? And I think I can see a significant game changer for the medium and the small guys. Frankly, I'm concerned at how the smaller MPOs with small staffs they're going to have to rely quite a bit back on the departments how to put these together. But I see that there's going to be a staffing issue, qualified planners. I see there's going to be an issue with funding. The department's done a nice job with the smaller one and stepped up with some SBR dollars, which is going to help. I keep hoping that we will get legislation and more money. That's been a fond hope for a long time now. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a challenge for all of us. The TMAs have the opportunity to, if with their policy board permission, to use STP dollars, but the smaller ones don't. So it's both in terms of resources, in terms of funding, and in terms of people to do the job, the analytics to do it. It's going to be a challenge.
John?
So small MPO, small district, we all work together. And obviously, as it's true across the state in the larger areas too, it will be a challenge. It's mostly fear of the unknown right now because we really don't know what it's going to take to feed this beast. But we will make it work when we learn the ground rules. Just maybe I haven't been following this whole conversation closely enough, but one of the things that's come to mind that I want to kind of keep an eye on and kind of wonder about, being unfortunately maybe stemming from my suspicious nature of change. I hope we don't inadvertently build a box that's going to deny us some flexibility we currently have with our discretionary spending, or spending our discretionary programs. And it's pretty limited in my world, but Category 1, Category 11 type projects. I think this will help inform us and enhance our project selection process for that, but I hope it doesn't inhibit our flexibility in applying those funds, moving them around to the most needed projects, and to adapt to relatively short fuse opportunities. But that may not be a problem at all. It's just something, looking through this, I became kind of worried about.
Well, two observations about things that I think can really dramatically help. That really wasn't your question, and they're both really compliments to TxDOT. The first is, if you sat in the session this morning and you're around this, like we all are, the amount of information that is being collected today, the technology that's using to collect it, the way we're able to make it available faster and sooner, not only to us, but to the public. You know, we always had sort of this convenient sort of concept that, well, we plan something, build it, but it was very difficult to collect a lot of real-time information to really report back, you know, what the outcome is. We can't hide behind that anymore as planners and engineers. The capacity there now, and if you sat in this morning, the amount of data that TxDOT is collecting and making it available via the web is phenomenal. I mean, I was just, for where we were 20, 30 years ago to where we are now, and you know, not only is it available to all of us in the business, but a lot of it's available to the public, and there's a lot of the public that's getting very informed about transportation. But that aside, I think the fact that we have access to so much more information about how the system is operating is really going to help this whole performance-based process, and hats off, TxDOT's really done a terrific job. The other thing that, in sort of preparing for this discussion, compliment to Michelle and the TP&P staff in the development of their statewide plan. This idea that they've been able to really blend together what have been these sort of standing policies of TxDOT over the last 5 years or 6 years that even the MPOs were required to memorize: safety, pavement, and to craft those then into goals and then link those back to specific performance measures and really put a framework together in their plan document, I think is, if you haven't taken the time to look at it, I think it's a remarkable piece of work. I think it's going to be helpful for the MPOs to actually use that framework. Quite frankly, we're not there yet. We've never really been able to tie all those things together in a way that provides sort of a logical path to make decisions. Back to the earlier comment, the thing you always get worried about is, do we find ourselves getting in the way of what we want to accomplish? And you know, that's a challenge. I think that's kind of what we ran into in the management systems. I think everybody thought they were a really good idea, but when they found out how much work it was going to be, or how the outcome of it didn't really quite line up with what we really wanted to build or do, you know, then I think people said, well, maybe these are not such a great idea. But yeah, I think between the information we have, the structure TxDOT's provided us, I think it's probably a national example. Hats off to them. But I do think there will be opportunities to use that information to do this better.
I would echo Dan's statement about data, and I hope that we don't get paralyzed by too much data, that we're still good engineers trying to solve good problems, that we're not just looking at trying to increase a performance just to increase performance, but we're actually trying to go out there and solve problems. I think too that, as John said, putting us in a box. Again, try to be good engineers, try to design solutions that are solving problems. And then the last I think that we really need to work on is closing that feedback loop of performance planning, and that's monitoring those projects that we did. Did they actually solve the problem that we set out to? We don't have a real robust, active system to do that. Did that pavement widening really reduce fatalities through that corridor? Did adding that additional lane really reduce congestion? I think that's really, we're going to have to strengthen our data collection and observations is finishing that feedback loop and really monitoring the performance of those decisions we made.
I agree with John. I mean, question, especially for the engineers, I mean, can we design, build, and operate systems that are nimble enough that if we go out and find out that maybe we would have liked to done something different, can we change it? What will the cost be? What would the implications of that be? I agree. The whole system is designed so you learn something and you don't make the mistake twice, or you improve it. But you know, Brian goes out and spends $3.2 billion. I don't think he's going to want to throw his hands up and say, well, you know, I might not have done it that way. Hopefully we've done enough advanced planning and engineering and modeling and simulation and study that we don't make those mistakes. I'm pretty confident that we have. But I do agree with John. The purpose of it is to really get to the end game and really see, you know, did we make a difference or not? I will tell you, early indications that we're seeing in the managed express facilities is very early in Dallas-Fort Worth, but the results seem to be impressive. I mean, the corridors that were nightmares, 183 LBJ that's recently opened, it's remarkable. The traffic is moving, people are hopping off and paying the toll when they need to. So eventually demand may catch up with those, but early indications is those systems are working well.
Michelle?
To speak to, I guess, some of the challenges in this area. We all work hard at this, but I think that data and analysis tools are going to allow us to also work not only harder but smarter. and be able to use data to help inform decisions. I absolutely agree with some of the other panelists that data does not make the decision for you. It informs a decision. But the reason that it's important, good data is important, and good analysis in a timely manner is important is not only does it help us, do I believe it helps us make good decisions. And to be clear, this isn't a new thing. We've been using data for a long time and handling performance pretty well here. It's now just mandated and we're going to have to report on it. But the thing is that when we make decisions based on data, they are more defendable to our stakeholders. They are more defendable to elected officials. They're more defendable to the traveling public. And so I see a benefit in having the right data and the right tools to make these decisions. Again, this is not a new territory here. We've had now for almost a year, we've had the electronic STIP up and running. I can't speak for all of the users, but I know it's cut out a tremendous amount of time between deciding to let a project and actually getting approval. So again, as we adopt tools, we can't always provide staff to smaller areas, but what we can do as a department is provide them tools where they can better utilize the staff that they have. And I think that's been a huge success in cutting time out. It's been successful in letting people know what that document actually is in the coordination. So if we continue to develop tools and good data, these processes that used to take weeks or months we're gonna close the gap in the amount of time that it takes. I think that's very helpful in addressing some of the challenges. That tools are only as good as the data that are in them, and they're only as good as we work together to understand how to use those tools. So again, I think TxDOT is always ready and willing to be an extension of staff in a small MPO or small district. I know that people I work with are, so we're always here to help out in any way that we can. And then finally, I think that again, the huge challenges and things that we heard while we were out on the road is that there are different needs clearly in rural areas than there are in urban areas. There are different needs for freight than there are for the traveling public. There are different stakeholder environments, different political considerations, different opinions on how to go about addressing the problem. But I think at the end of the day, we are all aiming towards the same goal, and that's improving the safety and efficiency of the system. And I trust that will carry us through as we work our way through finalized goals and setting targets. We just need to make sure that we as a department and all of our stakeholders have the right tools and information to help them get the job done.
Well, for our more medium size, I mean, we have the challenge of true transportation issues in our area, and we don't have as I heard others mention, a large staff that deal with this, day in and day out, both, at MPO level and at our support, even from the district side. It's just a few folks, and that learning curve is going to require some assistance. And I see an education challenge from our members, both at the policy level and the technical level. It's going to be a little bit of a shift from our previous conversations of how to prioritize projects, because it's a little bit different playing field. And then you throw in, I heard the time constraints on this, that once the rules were to come out, that it could be 6 months to then have things in order. And that is going to be a challenge to get everyone to work together and then agree on a way to move forward in a quick time frame. We have to shift from our previous methods of selecting projects to try and see that all different agencies in all different areas were getting a piece of the pie, to potentially looking at that shift to, well, where is it best utilized to benefit the system when it's come to how do you then rate your performance of utilizing those funds. And so that is going to be a challenge that everyone can work together and try and make that overall improvement as a group. So education-wise and learning the new process, I think is going to be a big challenge for someone in our size, our area.
Anybody, any additional comments? Okay. Now I would like to open it up to see if there are any additional questions. No. This is a really, unique experience to have all these folks up here on the panel. This is your time to ask them. Bill, are you coming down?
Right now, I'm moving laterally. But I'm about to descend. I guess it's too late to now say I was just going to go to the restroom. Am I turning red yet? Mr. Leary, I've got a quick question. And this came up at I think there was a Federal Highway sponsored workshop some time back about performance-based planning. Some, especially smaller and medium-sized locations, are concerned about setting targets, and then what if they don't meet them?
Right.
And then there might be concerned about, well, what if we just say we're going to set a target to where we won't get any worse than we are because they don't have a lot of change or there's not a lot of congestion. Is there a federal perspective on not setting the bar too high, but what's realistic, and what are the potential penalties if someone doesn't, quote, meet their target and they find out, wow, that was a little bit unrealistic? Can they go back and reset, or would they be able to?
You evidently weren't listening when I said I can't talk about that stuff. Were you, Bill? So.
I was in the restroom.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's, within the performance targets the state sets and that the MPO sets, what leeway is there going to be for, where you have a problem, that you set your target within the MPO too high, and you're not making, and what resources do you put back on it to adjust that problem? Is it additional resources as it comes back to, do you reset that target with a justification? That depends on what the rules come out and say. There's going to be an evaluation. What comes out of that goes back and forth. I can't tell you now. I know that particularly there's a part of the law that says looking at when this is over with, what effect did this have on the non-TMAs? How did this work with them? Is this proper? That's a report that goes back to Congress from us. What happens if the targets are too high? What happens if the targets are really set too low and you're not really performing? I mean, you're just essentially marking spot. Those are things that have to be answered, and that's part of what the rec will come out and say. But you'll see a lot of Federal Highway. Just make you real happy, I'm sure. So,
Bill, I think one of the challenges in that, there's discussions that have been there about the idea that if you didn't hit your targets, there would be some federal direction to redirect your priorities. I think the big question is, do we have enough continuity in federal transportation policy for that to last through the life of something else you build and the same policies are in place? We haven't had that from the federal perspective. We haven't had a federal bill for 3 years, and if you kind of go through the life of ICE-T and MAP 21 and T21 and all that we've had, yeah, there are some consistent things, but some of these things seem to come and go. So I think that's going to be an interesting question because we can redirect dollars towards projects, but we all know that that's not going to happen overnight. Design, development, that's an 8 to 10 year initiative to get funds redirected towards a specific initiative. And I think that's a good question. What the outcome of that will be is going to be a challenge.
Brad?
Right now, with the assistance that TxDOT's provided to the MPOs with the data, traffic volumes, travel times, those types of things, the CRIS program with all the safety data that's available to us, we're starting to be able to transition more to, I think, what the federal regulations were looking for as far as performance-based planning. But there's still this really big gap between where those performance metrics stop and where we make final decisions on prioritizing our projects and how we get those into that development pipeline. So my question is, does anybody see, is there another tool, or are there some new tools coming to help us close that gap?
Are you directing that at anybody
Yeah, I was
specifically?
gonna say, everybody jump in.
I think, Michelle, we're all looking at you.
Okay, fine. I will take the question gladly. The answer to that is yes. We absolutely are developing tools that are going to make this process a lot more nimble and a lot more transparent. Tools that are not going to take the decisions away from the decision makers, but again, help them make really informed decisions and make them in real time. We've been working since January on loading all of what we call the metadata, the CRIS data, BRS, PIMS, into a tool that we're developing to allow folks to put their portfolio, if you will, or list of projects in and compare it to the same data as everybody else, the same data that the department uses, same data that's reported at the federal level. We just, I guess last week, did a demo of projects for the HB 20 committee, and we've been working with the Tempo Performance Measure Subcommittee on being able to bring these tools, forward and make them available. And so, again, resoundingly, yes, we are, and we are really working towards the state-of-the-art type of tools. We realize that the time frame is going to be short, so we need to be ready. Again, I think nimble is the key word here. We need to be able to hit the ground, put the projects in. So really, I don't think the department or any of the folks we've worked with on the Tempo subcommittee or any of the districts we work with expect any less. They have been very forthcoming. They've been very supportive, and they know that we're going to need to be able to make these decisions quickly once these rules are finalized. So yes, we're working furiously to be able to be ready to move forward with performance-based planning and ready to advance, current processes for, I guess, prioritizing projects. But I think what's more important is that it goes to what the rest of the panel has said. It's not enough to prioritize the projects. We're working on a tool that actually has some predictive capabilities that will tell you what you're able to buy with the money that you have. And were you to look at the data, long enough over a period of time, you would probably be able to also quantify what kind of performance that you're getting out of that, which is the very essence of being able to set targets and meet targets. I will go back to the conventional wisdom. We got asked this a lot while we were on the road, and again, I'm speaking as Michelle Conkle, a planner. The entire country is going to be in the same boat. I don't see anything at the federal level, and I have actually been able to talk with folks at the federal level in a couple of meetings that I went up and attended. It's not going to be the sky is falling, because every state has this, every MPO has this, everybody's struggling with it. Secondly, we all know, and again, I don't want to crow too loudly, the Texas transportation system is vital to the national economy. So it doesn't, again, conventional wisdom tells me, as someone who's done this, again, like Dan, for almost 3 decades, we're not just going to have our funds cut off. That would not make a whole lot of economic sense. So, really to try to wrap back into the question, I think too that we forget that we've been here before. If you think about air quality, those of you that know air quality, we have, it's not exactly analogous, but we have, TCEQ has a SIP. They have statewide air quality targets that they have to set, and the non-attainment areas have their tips, and they have to pick projects. We've done this. I don't think it's a time to panic. I think that we have, some of us have been doing it, and we just have to talk about our experiences with having smaller local plans and targets roll up into larger local plans and targets, but we've done that with air quality. And we're all still receiving money, and we're all still building projects, and we're all growing as a state. So I think that with the right tools and the right mindset and looking to the past, to some of the some of the wins we've had in other situations like this, TIP, STIP, and SIP, we have a blueprint for how this would work. So thank you for the question.
Any additional questions? No one? Okay, at that, if there's no additional questions, I'd like to thank all the panelists. Job well done. I think this is an exciting time. I think no matter what comes out, I think we'll all do a great job. So thank you very much.